Whistle, Tales from Azeroth. As always here at the Pick and Whistle in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. I grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This week we'll be going over arenas, more specifically PvP actually, like as a broader spectrum I should say. And we're going to be looking at what are people's sort of dislikes about it almost in a sense. And why people feel like it's dying or needs to be fixed, or like what is the problem around PvP essentially at this current moment. But as always, we have the weekly news to get into. Basarikron, Zakani Elders, and Aerostar are your weekly world bosses. Basarikron can be located in the Waking Shore, Zakani Elders in the Zaralak Caverns, and Aerostar in the Emerald Dream. World quests are your bonus event for this week, so you get more reputation for doing world quests. Pump Stomp is your brawl for the week, although I think they're still experimenting with Battleground Blitz. I'm not too sure. I'm really not too sure, but Comp Stomp should be there. It's essentially you're playing against AI, and it's a nice way to get some honor, to just farm some gear essentially for ults. Entangling, Bolstering, and Fortified are your mythic fixes for the week. Entangling, there's some stuff on the ground, you simply move out of it. Bolstering, when you kill a mob, they will shout and empower nearby friendly or nearby enemies, giving them increased damage and health. And Fortified, the non-boss enemies in dungeons have increased health and damage, so bring a talent build that can accommodate for that. But let's get into the main part of this, which is people's reactions on why PvP is dying. This one doesn't hold any sort of merit. I just wanted to put this one in. As DPS, my first thought was, oh my god, Blizz secretly fixed the queue time somehow. Suffice to say, I was excited. Halfway through the match, the one person that lost 3 in a row up and leaves. Nice game. Firstly, that's not Blizzard's fault. There is no way you can blame Blizzard for that. That is the fault on one person out of 6 who rage quits because they don't have the mentality to lose 3 rounds in a row and potentially more. That's them. Not the game's fault. Not Blizzard's fault. Not anyone else's fault. The person who leaves. That's their fault. You can't blame Blizzard for that. In terms of shorter solo shuffle queue, I do think that they've actually adjusted this, because on my druid, I think around 22, like 2.2 MMR at the moment, which is relatively good. I got like 5 back-to-back instant queue pops. And I was shocked. I don't quite know what happened there. Maybe I just got freakishly lucky with the timing. Or maybe they have fixed the queue times, but I think that they're looking at it. The only problem is they do not communicate these sort of things clearly, and as often as I think people would like, but I think they are looking into this. But again, that one is just a silly one. You can't really complain about that, because that is on the person who quit, essentially, rather than, rather than a company problem. This one is quite funny. Arenas are just not fun when it's a stun fest at this point. Why are stuns not on diminishing returns across the board in arenas? They literally are. They literally are on, diminishing return. If you stormbolt something, it will diminish and return every other stun. So, Hammer of Justice, Kidney Shot, Cheap Shot, they're all on DR. It's just stun after stun after stun, unable to just play. You saw that problem in Overwatch and had to fix it, and it's happening in this game too. It just makes the gameplay and PvP arenas so choppy. It would add a better sense of gameplay style and strategy to time stuns correctly, so they don't overlap or overlap the diminishing return instead of stun. I am only taking this in arenas, not battlegrounds or world PvP or duels or anything like that. Strictly arenas only. Well, the punctuation on this post is definitely not up there. Firstly, The only thing that stuns is rogue, sub-rogue, because cheap shot into a second cheap shot into a possible third cheap shot, depending on if they think they can kill the target. After that, you have the entirety of the diminishing return, which is 20 seconds, to run at them before it is off cooldown, and then you've got to be a bit more worried again. Now, this is what it's always been. This has always been the hit and run playstyle of Mage Rogue. Well, in Dragonflight, because mages were like tanks in Shadowlands, but that's besides the point. But the only thing that can stun is probably a rogue by themselves. Other than that, if you've got like a DHDK, you have a Frostworm stun into a Eruption into a Chaos Nova. But these stuns are very short in duration. It is enough to kill you, but then they silence after. And, you know, it's one of them things. It depends on the comp that you're playing against. But diminishing returns are all on the same diminishing return. They are certainly not as much of a problem as they were, like, early on in Dragonflight, like, before Dragonflight, essentially, as well. Because everything got nerfed. CC got nerfed quite heavily. So blind was 8 seconds. It is now 6 seconds or 5 seconds, something like that. I think it's 5. All the stuns got reduced by like 1 or 2 seconds, something like that. I know Hammer of Justice was a 6-second stun. It's now 5-second stun. So, you know, everything got put below 6 seconds, essentially, for CC, like, cap. Which makes sense, because blind, you just blind for 8 seconds, and then you sap off. And then, you know, you just... It was never-ending CC. That I can understand. But they have addressed this, and it is nowhere near as bad as what it was. Every stun is on its own DR, in terms of, like, it will proc the diminishing return for it. So it won't be stun, and then you can Hammer of Justice for a full duration for 6 odd seconds or whatever. Because, well, no, that's not how it works anymore. It's a stun. So... if you've stunned before, it will be at 50% reduced effectiveness, so it'll be a 3-second stun instead. You know, I don't know what this guy's on about. The only time that stuns are a problem, or something to be worried about, is against higher level rogues. Other players can make it work, like Warrior Stormbolt and Hodge at the same time in Ret Warrior. You've obviously got DHDK that can utilize them quite well, stuff like that. But a more average/lower player wouldn't be able to do this as cleanly, and it wouldn't be as much of a problem, in my honest opinion, as what this guy is basically saying. So honestly, in my regard, this isn't a problem. The stuns are definitely not a problem at all. I think that this guy's just had one too many bad solo shuffle experiences against a rogue, and is probably trinketing the wrong thing, is what my guess is going to be. But, you know, it is what it is. I don't know. I think he definitely needs to chill out a bit, because it really isn't that bad. It could be a hell of a lot worse. If you look up this guy as well, on like the Warcraft logs and stuff, his character isn't that geared, so I'm not too sure if he's got like an ult or anything, but he's on a level 19. Now, yeah, my guess is he's not going to be a super great player at this moment in time. From what I can see, I'm purely basing this off of what I can see from this season, it's not the longest he's been playing PvP for. So he needs to realise that there are certain times to trinket, certain times not to trinket. And he needs to realise that there are diminishing returns on everything, and that when he is on a diminishing return against something that is a stun class, such as a sub-rogue, then you can utilise that time to get aggressive, to get your own like damage out and stuff like that. But I think he's got a lot to learn in terms of like what he needs to do to counteract the stuns, because there's ways you can play around stuns even while you're stunned. Because in Rogue Mage Priest, like if you get behind a pillar and the rogue stuns you behind a pillar out of line of sight of his mage to help him, the chance of you dying drastically drop, unless the rogue has everything, of course. But you know, some people just don't think about that yet. Some people are like, oh my god, I'm literally, I can't counter this. I'm stunned in the middle of the map when you were right next to the rogue and didn't take into account that you were coming off diminishing cooldown. Like, it's ridiculous. Some people do need to get, like, a grip in a certain sense and just get over it, because it is nowhere near as bad as what it was. So, this one's the big one. The title of this is, it seems pretty obvious PvP is a minor part of the game to the point where they basically have abandoned it. What do we do about it as a PvP community? They aren't balancing PvP in a genuine way. Healer issue for solo shuffle doesn't even have proposed solutions. Some classes are left very strong and weak. Now, I'll address these 4 questions. There is a lot more to this post, but I will start with these 4. What do we do about it as a PvP community? We have started as a PvP community saying that this is a bit stupid that we're getting no sort of inflation in the PvP scene at the moment. So if you are a rank 1 player right now, I believe there is no one above Glad, like 2.4k. I could be wrong. That could be wrong as of the start of this week or the ending of this week. But from what I saw last week, I don't think there's anyone above 2,400, which is elite / gladiator. Now, Waz, for example, is a BlizzCon winner, multiple rank 1s, like so much more than I'll ever fucking achieve, but he essentially has not got over 2.4. 2.4 is when you get your gladiator mount. You need 50 wins above 2.4k to get your gladiator mount. Now, in previous seasons, gladiator's a good achievement. It's a very good achievement. It's a respectable achievement for those who are just above average, I would say, and it's something that you can definitely work towards. But that is in a normal inflation season. Now, what do I mean by inflation? Every week, they're meant to inject a little bit of inflation into the rating system. So if you were, we'll just say, a nat 2000 rating, next week, your inflation, so that 2000 rating that you were last week, it will go up to 2050. But you will still be the same rank, if that makes sense, because everything just goes up. So those who were 1500 will go to 1550. You know, you slowly make your way up, and it feels like you're working towards something, whether it be a transmog, whether it be a glad mount, whether it be a title, multiple different things. But they haven't done it. To give you an example, I think in Shadowlands Season 2 was the highest inflation I think anyone's ever had. I think people were hitting 3.4k. I myself hit, I think, 2.7, something like that. This is the first season that I started playing 3s. I hit 2.7k, which is good. It's not bad, and I was very happy with it. Since then, I don't think I've gotten above... I didn't play Shadowlands, the last 2 seasons of Shadowlands, PvP-wise, but I haven't gotten above 2.1.5k, 2.2k from Dragonflight. And Dragonflight PvP I've been playing quite a lot since Season 1, and that's just because of inflation. I'm looking over my gameplay and stuff like that. I am better than what I was back then. So are the people that I'm playing with. But they got that rank, so did I, because of how inflated the season was. And that's the same with rank 1 players. Rank 1 players, like I said, were at 3.4k, something like that. And now they're not even above 2.4. So it really does show how deflated everything is. And that's like what the PvP community have been addressing and asking Blizzard, like, what's happening? Can we get something? Can we get like a little carrot or a bonus or something? Like a 500 rating injection into the season all of a sudden, something like that. So the community is doing something about it. There's been loads of tweets about it, which is really cool. And hopefully we'll get a message back from Blizzard very soon. But it is the festive period very soon. So hopefully they either do something before or give us a bit of communication before to say we will address this as soon as we're back from the holidays and stuff like that, because that will give us some hope. And that's all we need. As long as we get the communication, it's very good. But we haven't got any yet, which is the negative on that part. They aren't balancing PvP in a genuine way. I do have to slightly disagree with this. They have brought out loads of different changes constantly all throughout Dragonflight, throughout every season of Dragonflight, that are addressing PvP issues, balancing issues, and stuff like that. They've already nerfed Resto Druids and Demon Hunters, I think, a couple times this season. But yeah, some things just, if it's not going your way, this person's a Death Knight. Unholy Death Knights are quite decent with the current meta being a Demon Hunter, because DHDK is a very strong composition, but it's just one of them things. Healer issue for Solo Shuffle doesn't even have proposed solutions. They did say something about Healer Solo Shuffle and why it gives an MMR and stuff like that, but I think that they didn't do any proposed solutions because I think they solved them already. I immediately went to 2.1 on my Mistweaver Monk at the start of the season, and the thing is, I got 2.2 as the highest in terms of last season rating. So to get 2.1 immediately on my healer is nice. But at the same time, I feel like most of the streamers who do play healer and the pros are stuck around 2.2, 2.3. So they might not have fixed it, but who knows? But that is the same as DPS as well. There are very few DPS who are above 2.4 at the moment, if any. They're sat around the 2.3, 4 mark, something like that. Some classes are left very strong or very weak. I do have to kind of agree. There's always going to be the outlier in this. There are going to be some classes that are strong, some classes that are weaker. It depends on how long they leave it for. With Retribution Paladins, back in Season 1, they gave them the rework, and they, after a couple of weeks, immediately nerfed them quite quickly. Demon Hunters, they didn't want to play around with until the Race to World First was done. So I think that took a couple of weeks as well. But they do relatively address stuff very quickly that is strong. For stuff that is weaker, they try and... I feel like they go about it the wrong way. They nerf stuff in order to make the weaker stuff... Actually, is that the wrong way? I feel like there's both positives and negatives to it. But I feel like the weak stuff does get addressed very small proportions because they don't want to overbuff something and then it's oh, now this is too strong, so you got to nerf this. They buff it up very slowly and it's sort of a power creep thing. You slowly move up the rankings, and then when the big thing gets nerfed, you become the next big thing, and then you get nerfed. It's that kind of deal. For the next points, the rating system is oh my god, why is that word not processing in my head? I'll just go with this. Is old. Why haven't we copied systems like bronze, gold, diamond, etc.? A bit arbitrary numbers that don't have a consistent baseline is kind of strange. You could be a 3.1k player, but due to mismanagement, 3.1k isn't the same between seasons. This I do have to agree with. They even need to make MMR a static thing, in terms of you don't inject inflation, or you inject the same inflation each time throughout the season. So after a couple of weeks, it will go up by 50. Next couple of weeks, go up by 50. Have a consistent inflation injection, or you just have a set amount. So in Overwatch 1, you had 0 to 5,000 rating. If you were over 4,000, you were in... I think it was GM. Yeah. You're over 4,000, you're in GM. If it was 3,500 to 4,000, you were Masters. If you had 3,499 down to 3,000, you were Diamond, etc., etc. I think that is the best way to go with this if you are doing a numbers-based ranking system. Gearing feels slow early in the season. Combined with that slow rating gain, there really isn't a reason to queue till later on, which feels extra disingenuous because it feels like they are saying we'd rather you PvE or Season of Discovery early in the season. If you PvE or PvP, the system works out for you because you aren't punished for focusing on PvE, taking a Great Vault for PvE, because the PvP season only pretends to start when in reality it starts when meaningful inflation gets added later on. If you notice, they won't inflate ratings until the majority of the players have accomplished their PvE goals. I think the majority of players who play PvP don't play PvE as much. In terms of there being a reason to PvP early on in the season, there is, because you still get your conquest pieces, you fill up your vault, so you get extra pieces, get your tier set for any characters, for ults that you need, etc., etc. It is about gearing. At the end of the day, World of Warcraft has always been about gearing your characters since its very start, or since its very creation, and this is how they do it, so that it actually means something. You're making your choices carefully. It's like, oh, okay, so if I spend 700 here, I still have enough to buy a ring, or if I spend all of it on a weapon, I only get the weapon, so is the weapon worth like 3 pieces of gear instead of it? No, it isn't. Yes, it is, that kind of deal. So you really have to do the maths on it and work it out. But I think the inflation just takes longer than it should. I do think he's got a point there, and I do feel like it should be slow increments throughout the entire year, or that entire patch cycle, essentially. But the thing is, they don't know when the patch is going to end. That's the reason why Season 2 got inflated so much, because it was a very long patch. So they need to have a deadline for the next patch, and they need to be like, okay, so this will make it that we only add 30 MMR into like inflation each week, something like that. Or okay, this is going to be a really short patch, so we'll add 100 each week, that kind of deal. There are players dedicated strictly to PvP. We pay a sub. PvP is included in this sub. It's offered to us as one of the reasons to continue to play the game. Do you sub for PvP? Are you getting your money's worth? I think everyone can have a different opinion on this, but I feel like I get my money's worth, mainly because I enjoy PvP. I just enjoy it. Now, whether it be no inflation, there is inflation, whatever it is, I just enjoy PvP. I play with people that I enjoy playing with, and I think that it's one of the most enjoyable experiences that I've had in the gaming industry. So I think my take on it is I get my money's worth. Other people might not be so lucky. They might have to do Looking for Group, and Looking for Group is known to be a shit show at times, or Solo Shuffle, where you wait around for 15 minutes, get a queue as a DPS, and potentially have someone leave. That kind of deal. So that's very subjective, I would say. Does PvP need a massive rework at this point? Not just reworking toolkits and CC or something, but an overhaul of their PvP philosophy. More of an open book and what's happening behind the scenes. I think all of this can be brought to... I think if there was just communication on what they're looking at doing behind the scenes, a simple Reddit post, not even Reddit post, a forum post where it's like, we're looking into like demon hunters and DKs this week. We'll be posting something like later on. They usually post changes on Tuesday or something, if I remember correctly. But, something that's like, we're going to be looking at these classes this week. Thank you all for your patience. We'll be looking at this map or something. We might be reworking it. Any communication would be very good in terms of PvP for us. And that's the bare minimum we kind of expect, I think. From a company as big as Blizzard. Whether Blizzard wants to admit it or not, they have 2 games within retail, PvE and PvP. Kinda true, but I'm doing PvE content in PvP gear. I'm a PvP player, but I want to try and do some PvE, just kill some time, stuff like that. Blizzard, please acknowledge the PvP community. The money and time we invest in the game is just as valuable as any other player. I do kind of have to agree with that. I think people don't realise how much they've done for PvP in this expansion. The only thing that they've gotten wrong is the MMR. Granted, it's a big point, but I think if you look at everything that they've worked on since Shadowlands, I think that it has been a very positive upward graph, essentially. The only thing that they have ballsed up this expansion is the MMR. But that's my opinion, honestly. PvP continues to be played and loved by this community, which is amazing because we are almost last in terms of priority. terms of quality of gameplay, etc., etc. One has to wonder how popular PvP could be if they invest in meaningful resources into it. I feel like they do invest a lot of resources into it. I think a lot of things with regards to PvP is the fact that getting in and jumping into PvP to start with is a very scary prospect, because you've obviously got people who are using a shit ton of add-ons. They've known the game for years. They've played every class. They know the ins and outs of classes, stuff like that. And to jump into that when you've only played a mage, say, you're very reluctant and like, oh my god, what the fuck did I just get hit by? Okay, that's something called glacial, no, not glacial spike, because that would be a mage. Or that was something called like blade dance. It's one of demon hunters, you know, using his dance or something, or the hunt. And it's like, I've never seen that in my life. Like, what does it do? How do I counter it? And then you've got to learn all of the other spells of every other class and what they do and what they use as defensives, etc., etc. So I think it's more of a daunting task for people to get into PvP, rather than it not being managed in a good way. But I think the only thing that they have got wrong this expansion is the MMR, like I said before. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. As always, do check out all of the socials down below. Constant stuff happening over there. But once again, thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye.